Hey everybody, welcome to the shop, and today we are in the mill, and I have decided to take apart this 8-inch Meadows Mill that I own, and I wanted to give you a tour of the interior workings of it, put it back together, and then give you a demonstration about how to actually operate this particular mill. What's really nice is that it only takes a few tools to pull it apart. There are 7 bolts that hold this thing together, so it's really easy to take it apart and maintain this particular mill. Now, this mill is actually fairly new by any reasonable standards. It's probably built in the mid-90s, which is reasonably new as compared to the Williams Mill, which is out of shot. That mill is over 100 years old. And it's also made a little bit different in that this has a cast iron exterior and that has a wooden exterior. Otherwise, there is very little differences between something that is 100 years old and something that is from the 90s. And so I'm going to go through the various component parts of the interior right now. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is the millstone. And this is the runner millstone. And I've got the bedstone over here on this side. Just turn it that way. These stones are exact copies of the other, so they are cut in the exact same way. Now what I want to point out with this millstone are these grooves that are cut into the stone. This is pink granite. These grooves are important for how the stones work. This is a really small example. It's a really simple example where it only has the one furrow going from the center to the exterior. Larger millstones are going to have additional cuts in them, kind of about like that, actually. And they're going to have the same profile where they're cut deeper out here and shallow out this way. The purpose of this cut and it being deeper here than it is at the exterior is so that the grain which comes in here has a space to go. So it comes up into this open, more open area down here at the bottom. And it comes up this way, and these grooves, these furrows, are designed to break the grain. And as you can see, these furrows are at a tangent to the center of the stone. And that also helps to encourage the grain toward the exterior. So as it turns, it's going to constantly move grain up into the exterior of the stone. So as the grain moves up, it gets broken and pulled across onto the lands. Now these lands are actually what does the majority of the grinding itself. These just break the grain down. This actually is what's going to do the majority of the grinding, actually. And so you've got 2 exact copies of the stone working together, and the grain working between these stones is what gets ground out, ground down into the flour or the meal or whatever it is that you might actually be grinding. Okay. This is the bedstone, and it's actually on this side where the grain enters. And so the grain enters down here, and it comes out here. Now, this mill has this spring, and this is actually a dual-purpose part for this mill. And it fits over the end of the shaft like this and goes all the way down. And I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it or not, but the spring it goes all the way to this back end of the mill. And what this does is it acts as an auger. So the grain goes down into here, and then the spring augers the grain outwards toward the interior of the stones. And that's what its primary purpose is for. Its secondary purpose is to actually be a spring. And so there's a hole here in the runner stone part, and this spring helps to keep the stones apart. Because when you've got no grain running through this thing, you don't want the stones to actually touch. If the stones grind together with no grain in between them, and you've got stone on stone, that's eventually going to damage your stones. It's going to wear out your grooves. It's going to put a nice flat glazing on your stone, which is no good. You can see how this is made. This little point here goes into this hole, actually. So, and I'm going to actually go ahead and put this together. There we go. Whoop. Well, there we go. Okay. So I'm just going to compress it like that. And there are 2 set screws, which I'm going to screw down with a 13/16 Allen wrench. And you can see, as I put this together, there's a pretty decent space in here. And that's okay. And I'll show you why here in a little bit. But to give you the quick version, there's actually a screw on the mill body back here behind me that will allow to make adjustments in and out on this stone. So I'm just going to get it right to there. No, moved it. Okay. And I'm going to tighten it down. Maybe. And my microphone has just magnetized itself to the body of the mill, which is kind of funny. And when you're taking one apart like this, try not to lose your set screws like I did and had to go buy new ones. Take that magnet off. Okay. So I pretty much got the mill back together in a lot of ways. This is the main drive pulley on this side of the mill, you see. And back here, okay, this shaft is going to go in this hole here. And the wheel, the knurled nut that makes the adjustments to this stone are actually on the other side of that piece there, and I'll show you that here directly. So now I'm just going to put this back together, and this thing really just puts together with 4 of these, some 3/8 bolts. So, Let's see here. Yeah. Okay. So I've put this part back on. And of course, the bedstone is on this side, the runner stone is on this side. There's this hand nut, and what it does is it adjusts the runner stone towards or away from the bedstone that's in here. And because I've had this apart, I need to actually kind of reset where this is. And so what I like to do is to go ahead and loosen the lock nut, and then we'll just run this all the way in until it's frozen. And that way I know this is exactly where the two stones come together. And I can actually mark it here on the end if I wanted to, and I would be able to have a good adjustment on where I want this to actually be. So right now, completely frozen. If I back it up just a fraction, turns just fine. And turn it in. You can hear the two stones grinding together, right? Okay, and you can see, well, you can't because the camera's over there, but I've got marks on my knobs here so that I know where things are. And this is pointing straight down 6 o'clock. So I know that at 6 o'clock, my stones are going to be grinded together. And that's where I don't want to be. I actually want to be back away from that, probably about the 5 o'clock position. No problems. Rolls just fine. And that's great. So now that I know where my stones are, everything is oriented together, and I'm ready to actually put the belt back on. This has, I think it's a this has a 1 horsepower motor on it, and it's just got a standard V-belt drive on it. Cool. So now this is back together well enough that I can now put the hopper and shoe assembly right here on top of it. There are just 2 bolts that hold this thing together that go on this thing. So let me show you what that looks like. So this is the hopper and shoe assembly. And it fits onto the mill right like that. And this contraption right here has a bolt in it, and it bolts to an eccentric here on the end of the shaft. And its purpose is, well, there we go. It's kind of hard to hold it. That's what it does. It just accentuates this thing here so that it jiggles. So you put the grain in here, and this is a setting to adjust the flow of grain down into the mill. And this is designed to vibrate and encourage the grain to come down the shoe and into the mill from this direction here. So let me put this on for you. So having a good basic understanding about the internal mechanisms of how this thing actually works can help you run it better, because you understand about how the interior components are working. And so you know a little bit more about how it's going to operate and what you can do to it to affect the outcome when you're ready. Now, one of the great things about this particular mill is that you need very simple tools to work on it. I have a 1/2-inch wrench, I have a 9/16 wrench, I have a 3/16 Allen wrench, and I also have to have one specialized tool, which is a thin 9/16 wrench, which you use to tighten up this nut here on the eccentric. If you cannot find a thin wrench like this, simply go out to like Harbor Freight, for example, and buy the cheapest 9/16 tool you can find and grind it flat, and that'll work just fine.